So this is the Citizen Diplomacy Research Group. It's an affinity group of the Public Diplomacy Council, and we have meetings every 2 months. I'm explaining this in part for those of you who are new. Typically we have around 30 people showing up. There may be some people gradually filing in. Michael is just joining us from Ghana. The meetings are live, international, via Zoom, and devoted essentially to trying to learn more about what kinds of citizen diplomacies are occurring out there, and reporting on those, and also at times actual research by scholars on those, on citizen diplomacy. So that's the essence of it. As you might notice, for those of you who've just joined us, the agenda is on the Zoom chat. Today, we're going to be focused on dance diplomacy, and we have four total speakers, essentially. Or Dana Vandenberg, who is the former executive director of Movement Exchange, just recently left Movement Exchange, but she will be talking about that and about dance diplomacy more broadly. As I understand it, Dana, your PhD work is on on dance diplomacy, so it's great to have you. Our second presentation is from Michael Woma, who is joining us from and I'm probably going to butcher the name, Dagara Music Center in Ghana. And so they will both be presenting each for 15 minutes, and then we'll have open discussion about dance diplomacy. So questions are welcome. You are welcome to actually post questions in advance in the Zoom chat as you go along. As you're thinking of questions, please, by all means, post them, because that will be a kind of nice guide to help structure our discussion. And otherwise, we will finish with announcements at the end. So if you have announcements, you may also want to prepare those announcements. They are, the Zoom chat really is a good place to do it, because after the meeting, I copy the Zoom chat and share it with our email list, which has over 700 people across the world on it, and something like 80 different countries. So not everybody, of course, is paying attention to their email, to those emails, but there are other people who don't make these meetings who actually join in and check out what's online. So, and we post the video of recording of this meeting, photos of the meeting, and the Zoom chat to our Google Space or Google Drive. So let's do introductions, since we have a relatively small group. Please be brief. I'm going to have Dana introduce herself, and then Michael briefly. Actually, let's have you guys go at the end, since you guys are, in fact, the presenters. And let's start with Tasha Troy.
Well, hello, everyone. It's great to see you all. My name is Tasha Troy with Troy Communications. We provide professional development, training, coaching, and consulting around leadership, cross-cultural communication, and cultural intelligence, and diversity and inclusion. Great.
Thanks, Tasha. And by all means, I'm assuming you shared. Yes, you did. It looks like you shared all your contact info in the Zoom chat. Rosella from Italy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rosella from Italy. I studied in Berlin, International Relations Cultural Diplomacy. I just finished my master, and now I'm searching. My interests concern research assistant in different NGOs and even in the academic field. Thank you, everyone.
Debbie Trent from the US.
Hi, everyone. I'm lucky to be the vice chair of the CDRG, and lucky also because Paul is such an able chair. So I have had a career at the U.S. Information Agency in academic exchanges. Then I went back to school, got a doctorate in public administration and public policy, and I was the managing editor of one of the Public Diplomacy Council's books, the most recent one on non-traditional public diplomacy, and that included a chapter that I authored, and it was an evaluation of a number of different cases, one of them being on dance diplomacy. So I am really excited to be here and hear everything.
Great. Izzy, I don't know what role you're going to be playing in this, but I think you're going to be playing in some role in the presentation, but nonetheless, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, my name is Izzy. I'm currently the interim executive director of Movement Exchange, and I have been working with Dana since 2019, up until recently, where she has taken a different path, also in dance diplomacy. So you'll hear a lot about Movement Exchange and her work as well, I'm sure, during the presentation. But yeah, I'll chime in here and there when needed.
Great. Julie from the US.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julie Moyes. I'm a retired public diplomacy officer with the Department of State Foreign Service for 32 years. And my most recent job with the Department of State was teaching cultural affairs tradecraft, in which I talked a lot about the kinds of work that you guys do. We always had a dance segment, and we talked about how dance could be used to reach people in other countries. So it's really an important part of what we did. And then most recently, I was just talking to a group of 100 older people, part of a program called Rhodes Scholars, also known as Elder Hospital, and they were so enchanted with the stories I told them about dance diplomacy. So I'm looking forward to more examples I can tell them next time I might meet with them. So thank you.
Great. Begum from Turkey.
Hello, sorry, I am turned off my cam because of some reasons. So I am not in Turkey at the moment. I am in Sarajevo. I am an independent researcher. I don't remember clearly, but I learned about this platform, I think, from LinkedIn or any other social media platforms, and I tried to join these meetings as best as I can. Thank you very much. And I'm also very excited to learn about this because I never heard such a word like dance diplomacy. So it's quite interesting for me. Thank you very much.
Great. Karina from Greece originally, but if I understand correctly, and if I remember correctly, but I think, are you in New York currently?
Yes, hi everyone. Very good memory, Paul. I haven't seen you for a while because I was working. So I graduated from the University of Maine in the Global Policy program, the graduate program. I relocated to New York City. I was interning for the United Nations for the Greek Permanent Mission, and now I'm looking for a job. I hope I'll find something, fingers crossed, not to stay in the US. That's my dream. I'm very happy to meet you all, and I will make sure to connect with everyone here on LinkedIn as well. Thank you,
Great.
Paul, and Miss Debbie for organizing this. Thank you very much.
Yep. Emily Wilcox from joining us from William and Mary in Virginia, in the US.
Hi, everyone. So I'm very new to this group. This is my first time attending, but I am a scholar focusing on dance in China, and I've written a lot about China's dance diplomacy, and I'm writing a new book about third world era diplomacy in the 1960s and how dance was a big part of that. So I'm excited to see what is going on today in dance diplomacy in the United States and elsewhere.
Great. Glad I sent you the invitation yesterday. Violeta.
And I'm sorry to say, I'm going to have to leave early because I have to teach and I have to drive to campus. So I apologize for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Violeta from Panama.
Hi everyone, I'm Violeta from Panama. I'm the Panama Country Director of Movement Exchange, and I've been working with them for almost 3 years. I am a professional dancer, also a psychologist.
Great. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to get to our presentations. I'm going to time this and be draconian about keeping you guys to 15 minutes. So Dana, if you can go first, and please, by all means, you should be able to share your screen and introduce yourself. And then Michael will hopefully, I think Michael just got disconnected, but I think he'll be rejoining us So Dana, go ahead.
Sounds good. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes, and you can see my screen? All right, so let me just go into present. Here we go. All right. And I'm starting my clock too to keep track of time. But anyway, I'm super excited to be here. It's also so wonderful just to hear the threads of dance that are already kind of popping up within the group we have assembled here. I was like a little bit worried that I'd be presenting to a whole bunch of people that weren't super connected to dance. And if you haven't spent much time thinking about dance, that's great. But I'm also happy that we have some people that are familiar with this as well, so we can kind of all pull from our collective experiences once we get into the conversation. But anyway, this is our presentation. And so I'm going to be doing kind of the bulk of the beginning part of the presentation. Like Paul mentioned, I'm no longer with Movement Exchange in administrative capacity, though I'm still on their advisory board. But I was tapped to do this before I left, and I wanted to have this chance to be a part of this group today, and also bring in some of my own research that I'm doing, as I'm also a PhD student in social cultural anthropology at IU Bloomington, where I am studying various themes related to dance and arts diplomacy. So with that, we're going to get going. So, oops. Oh, my computer is not. Hold on. There we go. Okay, so we're representing Movement Exchange here today. And just to kind of show you what our mission is and just to kind of read it off as it is. So Movement Exchange is a nonprofit organization that unites dance and service through its year-round sustainable dance education programs in the US and Panama, international dance exchanges, our university chapter network, and because of COVID, virtual programming. And so I just really want to quickly show you a little video about kind of Movement Exchange, so you can see us in action in our exchanges before the pandemic, and then we will keep going. And please let me know if you can't hear anything, or it should work, but just maybe give me a thumbs up. I'm living right here now, and I don't want to miss out. This is what life's all about. The world is calling and I'm listening. Yeah, I'm listening. That life is but a dream. And isn't it amazing? Oh, life can be amazing. Oh, I feel my heart beat racing. I'll fly something ever higher. I can light my inner fire, and then we'll see what happens now. What happens now? And then we'll see what happens now. What happens now? Watch what happens now. Watch what happens now. All right. So this is our introduction to global dance diplomacy, which is something that Movement Exchange has been thinking about trying to cultivate since we were founded in 2011. So we have been around now for, I guess, going on our 11th year. So this is something that has been a core part of our mission and what we do since the very beginning. And just kind of some core foundational elements to what we believe is kind of behind dance diplomacy. And that's first and foremost that dance education should be accessible to all, is something that is synonymous with service and engagement, and enables everyone to achieve optimal mental, social, and physical well-being. And before I kind of go a little bit forward just about into Movement Exchange in particular, I'm very briefly going to be drawing just on some of the academic work behind this. And this is my own kind of academic PhD scholar hat here. But a lot of times people wonder, like, why dance diplomacy? What does that even mean, right? And there's kind of this assumption that dance is just something that's fun. It's something that is just for leisure. But really, when you think about it, and it's hard to come up with an exact definition of dance. And I think it's for this reason why that people struggle to kind of grasp this concept. But I actually believe that it's something that the fact that dance is so many different things, right? It's something that's corporeal, right? Related to the body. It's individual, something you can do by yourself. It's something that is social if you do it with other people. But it's creative expression, entertainment, it's an art form, it's a form of education. It's often a healing practice around the world in many different cultures. It can be aspects of spiritual practices, part of individual identity, right? I'm a dancer, and part of a cultural or group identity. And I strongly believe that while this kind of abstract nature of dance makes it really hard to pin down what dance is and therefore what dance diplomacy is, because it is very abstract and diverse, it's reflective of how it is, movement itself is an innate and universal response to and of the human condition, and is thus a crucial and functional component of how we understand and engage in the world around us. And something that movement exchange has kind of come a long way in how we think about movement. I think we used to come thinking that, dance is universal. We have moved away from that, and through a lot of reflection over the years and different leadership, but really thinking about how dance and more largely movement itself is a shared human experience, right? Movement is something that we all share in some way, and we have a relationship to movement. And just in general, creative expression and the arts are an intrinsic part of being human, right? Our capacity for and interest in creative expression. But then also as humans, I love this quote, it's one of my favorite. We come straight away moving into the world. We are precisely not stillborn, right? Like our lives are defined by movement. Now that movement can differ in our abilities to move, but still movement is a very foundational part of who we are as humans. And that there is this implication that all human experience contains kinesthetic movement, right? Whether it's your own or kind of what you're taking in through the world around you. And we define ourselves and are defined by others through how we move through space and time. And so when you think about this in relation to kind of diplomacy, and I know when I was talking about with Paul earlier, we were talking about just, how can dance tackle, these big world issues that are often at the core of diplomacy, right? Trying to solve issues of social justice, trying to address human rights, trying to build relationships across different, cultural boundaries, geographic boundaries. And this kind of calls to, we've seen a lot within, academic literature, practical scholarship on diplomacy, that there's very much a kind of focus on the more legal understanding of, trying to build relationships, of trying to create social change. And kind of this very binary, there's socioeconomic rights and issues that have to be solved through diplomacy, and issues of civic and political rights or questions or challenges that need to be addressed. But there has been a lot of work that started to talk about how we need to think about theories and practice of affect, right? What it means to feel, and sentimentality in social justice and just more broader diplomatic discourse, right? Which is really what is the lived human experience. And something that, if you think about, and what we believe is that the kinesthetic experiences unique to dance spark individual empowerment of the actual dancer, but then also the sort of community cohesion and conversations and relationship building that is responsible for building and sustaining relationships that can generate social change. And these are just some kind of reasons why, right? There's a lot that relates to embodiment, right? That when we're dancing, whatever thoughts, emotions, or ideas that are being shared become embodied, right? They become visible or tangible. The idea of kinesthesia, right? Which is we become aware of our body and our means of sensory perception, which, relates a lot to empathy. If you're starting to register, how I feel, that's influencing how you think about feeling another person. I'm not a neuroscientist, but, this is also backed up by neuroscience, that we have mirror neurons, that when someone else moves, mirror neurons in our brain fire as well, and start reflecting that movement that we see. And then ultimately, this is a process of empowerment, right? And if we're trying to create people to feel confident in their ability to have conversations, share their ideas, they need to start that within their own body, right? And that's something that dance can really help cultivate. And that, throughout all of this, through engaging in dance, we build empathetic relationships. And so I'm going to kind of skip this a little bit just to move forward because of time. But it's something where we're being able to build these forms of embodied dialogue, right? Which is often, creates vulnerability, but then helps people build relationships stronger. And so these are just some of the guiding questions that Movement Exchange poses to our dance diplomats, right? Our group of dancers who are working with us as part of our university chapters on our International Dance Exchange. And I just pose these questions here to kind of see these are the types of questions that we as dancers and as dance diplomats are asking ourselves. And so our approach, and I'm going to kind of go through just another slide or two and then turn it over to Violetta to talk about what this looks like in Panama. But our approach is that, you know, we have service, right? And that happens locally across the US with our 20-ish university chapters that are teaching dance for free in their local communities. Our international dance service, which are our international dance exchanges, but then also our year-round programming that Violetta oversees in Panama, where we are teaching. Panamanian teachers are in our various youth organizations teaching dance throughout the year. And then education, right, which is the continued learning about what we're doing. And so this is all related to this idea of diplomacy is also very much connected to questions of inclusion, of cross-cultural understanding, of civic engagement and equity. And so this is our model, right? Like we have our kind of domestic university chapters that are working in their own communities, which they're experiencing what that means to get involved through dance, something that they're passionate about, build relationships in their communities. We have this happening on the other side in Panama, where this is happening on a regular basis, where for the past 11 years, we've been working in these programs. And then kind of the bridge between them is our international dance exchanges, where our university chapters and other dancers can come to Panama and experience our programs and our teachers, right? They take classes from our teachers and then they also teach. So it is kind of that exchange and creates that cycle of, you know, wanting to then take what you learn either back home and do it abroad, but then also conversely, you know, be able to experience this dance diplomacy abroad and then apply it back home in your community. And with that, I just want to turn it over to Violetta just to talk about what this looks like in Panama from her perspective. So.
Thank you, Dana. So I would love to talk about the word exchange because it's movement exchange. And when we are talking about serving, I really like to emphasize that it's not just the dancers that are teaching to the kids, but also how they can take from teaching. So what I see every time that happen a change in Panama, it's many times dancers don't know how they can serve with dance. So they come like very curious to know how is it, and they leave Panama like very how can I say, like with a lot of ideas in how they can help their communities at home. So I think this is a great way to see that it's a change. I'm not just giving, but I'm also receiving. And this view that poor kids they don't have family, but to learn how to see other person that maybe have different challenges than us, not like poor people, but help them to empower themselves. So all these conversations that we are having during the week that they're staying here, teaching the kids all the change that they're experimenting. It's very nice to see all the change that or the impact that this program have also in dancers. And we also have our teachers here in Panama, and they teach weekly different orphanage. We don't call them orphanage in Panama, but they are like houses where the kids can stay or small communities. And many times they don't have many activities to spend their time. So having this community of dance, they can connect with the teacher, they can learn value, discipline, and to learn how to express themselves through dance. So I have seen the kids, and I love to see that when I go to visit. For example, one of the places that we are teaching, it's called Aldeas, and to see the kids how they're empowering themselves. Like I can do this. They start learning about their bodies, about how to express their emotions. In the right way, like not being violent or uncontrolling their own emotions, but learning about how to express their emotions. So I think that it's like the beautiful part of this program, and it is not about like to be the best dancer, but learn the way to enjoy dance and move your body and feel part of a community, that it's a essential need that every human have. Many of these kids, they haven't had this opportunity to feel part of a family or feel part of a community, and through dance we are creating these connections, and they are feeling part of something and they love it. And at the same time, the dancers who are coming here, they can see how dance can impact different people, and they can use it as a tool to their society.
Thank you, Violetta. I think that was like just about 15 minutes. It's really hard to do this in 15.
No, but you guys did splendidly well. Violetta, really appreciate the fact. I'm sure it would have been great if you for you if you'd been able to have a quiet place, but I totally understand internet connection is not available all over the place. So really appreciate you you joining us but I was able to hear you, and I hope the rest of you were able to hear her as well. I just want to encourage, before we pass to Michael in Ghana, I just want to encourage everybody to post comments, post questions, et cetera, and so forth. Kind of try to cogitate or think about what's being said, because I think there's some really interesting stuff, basis for discussion. So your questions and your thoughts are encouraged in the Zoom chat. All right, so Michael Woma from the Dagara Music Center in Ghana.
So, and just a disclaimer, everybody. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I am sharing Michael's presentation from my screen, so it doesn't use up as much data in Ghana. So I'll let Michael kind of introduce everything, and then he's going to be telling me what to do. So just so you know. And I also just want to say that I'm super happy to have Michael here. I've worked with Michael also. Paul was like, we need someone else. And I was like, Michael, because I worked with him for 5 years during the summers in Ghana. So, a colleague, friend. And so I'm just super excited that we're actually able to put movement exchange and the DMC in the same presentation. It's like both of our passions all in one. So I just need to lay that open that we've worked together before. So.
Hey, hello everyone. My name is Michael Woma, the director of the Music Center in Ghana. Before we start our present, I would like Dana to play a very short video about what goes on at the DMC and some images about the founder of the Dagara Music Center before we can go into details to everything that we're supposed to talk about. So Dana, if you can kindly.
Yep, let me pull it up and share my screen. All right, is everyone able to see a video screen? Sorry, can you just do a thumbs up again? I had the thumbnail. Okay, cool. All right, and my sound is on, so you should be able to hear again as well. So.
A sonic portrait of Ghanaian master drummer Bernard Woma.
In our culture and in our tradition, musicians are perceived to be born, to be born, to be born, to be born, to be born. If you are born a musician, you will grow up to be a musician because it's going to be in your ears, it's part of your body. I was born with my fingers clenched as if I was holding the xylophone. That was a sign that I would be a xylophone player. According to my mother, when I was 2 years old, I could pick up this thing. From this house that us were sitting, I was the only musician born. When I was a young boy, like 7, 8 years, we used to go out for moonlight dancing. And that's where I hear a lot of the music in the night, and I just pick up. The guy I called my xylophone father was a xylophone maker and the player himself. His house was just right there. So I go there, play the instruments, and that's how I learned how to play the instruments and all that. The whole thing started here when I was like 10 years old. So I decided to find a job in the city. Every weekend, the Dagara people in the car meet at the place. They dance every Sunday, just like they do in my house. And that's how I was discovered by the Ghana Dancing Song, which is now the national dance campaign of Ghana. In Ghana, music plays a very important role. It plays just a natural or general role as children growing up. All the ceremonies we have, all the rituals we have, music is the central point. Music is the central thing. In the South, when children are born, there are ceremonies they call the outdooring ceremony. They bring the child out and name the child. They perform that ritual with music. Any social or ritual that takes place, the music is the central point. So music is very, very dominant in our day-to-day life. My father was not a musician, but he loved to hear music and he loved to dance. So when I was growing up, every market day, like I said, we have 6 days in a week. The market day, if tomorrow is falling with Saturday, the next week is going to fall with Friday. So in our village market, which is tomorrow, music is the thing we do.
All right. Thank you all again for giving me this great opportunity to also express what we do here in Ghana at the Dagara Music Center. So the Dagara Music Center was founded by Bernard Woma. He is a master Jew player, a drummer, and music scholar in 2000. So the main idea for the Daga Music Center is to portray the African Ghanaian culture and also to preserve the Ghanaian culture as well. So what the center usually do is to engage people who have the talent, music and dance, and also people who are more interested in dancing as well, and then train them, teach them, and also show them how to also pass on the teaching and also the practice of what we do at the Dagra Music Center. So it's not only Ghanaians that the Dagra Music Center engage, it's also engage foreigners as well, as long as students outside Ghana, universities, and also across the world. And mostly the programs that we do is the study abroad program, where we bring in more students that are more engaged in music and art. And so they can come and also experience the Ghanaian culture and art as well, in a way of collaborating and also sharing the music that we have to them, as well as they also share theirs to us. And it's not only the Dagra Music Center that is the main central point. The center has also created a dance troupe that also has an international dance group that travels outside the country to also perform and also portray the Ghanaian traditional music around the world. So some of the programs that we collaborate and also work with Move the World is one of the main key points that we collaborate with. They were a music institution, a non-profit institution that engage into music and also dance to educate people. So as times go on, they diverted from the music and dance aspect and also focus on the sustainable development goals, which we work with them hand in hand to make sure we engage kids through music as well, and also through the sustainable development goals to make sure they also have the idea of music and dance and also the development process in their surroundings. And again, we also engage in music exchange, where this particular NGO, their main focus is also to preserve traditional Ghanaian music as well. They believe that music is a way of healing the soul. So they engage people who are more into music and also educate them and train them about music and how it works with the ordinary person in a society. And then aside that, we have a study abroad program where we organize an in-country tour that students who are interested in music and dance can come to the center, and then we take them around and then teach them the Ghanaian culture and how it's supposed to be. It's not only music and dance that is in the Ghanaian culture, but also the food we eat, language we speak, and also even the dressing we dress, all portraits to come together to be a part of the Ghanaian cultural arts. So with this study abroad program, we engage people who are into traditional and then cultural aspects. So we can come and learn more about the Ghanaian culture and how it goes about. So all this usually goes, it was going until COVID came in. So with COVID, it kind of affected, the world as a whole. But then with the DMC, it affected our in-country tour. We were not able to travel to also share more of our traditional music and dance. And also we were not able to engage more people physically, because with dance, you have to have a physical feel of it and also be a part of it. That is how you're able to understand the dance and music as well. So with the pandemic, it kind of break everything down. But then thanks to Zoom and then social media, we are able to connect people through the internet, where we have virtual concerts about music and dance, where people still stay at their comfort zone and still enjoy what we have for them. So with all this, I think with this pandemic and everything, we still made it possible for people to still have access to the education of our traditional music and dance. And that is a great opportunity for the Dagara Music Center and also for those who are actually engaging with us as a whole. So in short, this is the very short presentation I have about the activities that goes on at the Dagara Music Center. Yeah.
Sorry about that, guys. I was muted. And you both came under the 15 minutes, which is great, which allows us a little more time for discussion. So a number of us have been kind of posting comments and questions. I'm going to start from the very top, I think, which I think was a comment from me. But I guess I'm really interested in these connections, right? Because between these different things that you guys mentioned, right? So there's and I'll tell you, as a sociologist, there's this whole realm of the sociology of emotions, and it's we're not the only social science that's increasingly interested in emotions, precisely because kind of philosophically, the West has been focused on rationality and has paid much less attention to the connections between rationality, emotion, and the body. And so dance seems to be one of those vehicles, right, for thinking through those connections. But also, I think beyond the kind of strictly personal, it's trying to think of this in terms of diplomacy and what implications it could have for diplomacy. And my central concern, as I kind of expressed it here, is my fear, right, is that things like music diplomacy, dance diplomacy, and other things are kind of relegated to a sideshow rather than rendered something centering it in formal diplomacy. And what I'm thinking of as you guys were talking is, what if formal peace negotiations started with like some dance diplomacy, right? Where they were actually moving their bodies and interacting with each other in that way, because it seems that might open, and this might sound naive, but there might be science to back it up, right? And Dana, I suspect you've got some science to back this up, that doing this kind of paying attention to our bodies and our emotions actually warms us up in some sense, right? Literally and figuratively, for deeper discussion and for being open to others that we otherwise are thinking strictly in rational terms in our interests. So I just want to kind of start off our conversation with that thought and get your Michael and Dana's thoughts on this, but also others as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, I think that's the key right there, is you get people that say, oh, well, you can't change the world with dance. You can't change the world with music because insert big issue here, racism, classism, like all these different big isms, right, that we try to address through diplomacy. People are like, you can't use dance to solve insert big issue here. And, of course, the answer is, well, no, like dance itself isn't going to solve it. Right? There's all these other things that come into play. But what if we started there, right? What if we started there and had these spaces to first actually get to build those relationships, to be able to feel comfortable expressing what we really feel, what our actual lived experiences are, right? Because all these also big isms, they impact the body, right? Like, and I think we're starting to realize that more and more, like something like race gets inscribed on the body, not just as like a visual thing, but as a lived embodied experience, right? So how can we use these types of embodied, creative, expressive things that humans have been doing for forever to be able to start those conversations, right? As like at a bare minimum. And then I really think there would be, my own bias is that there'd be a radical shift in how we end up being able to address and actually maybe even solve some of the other, big issues once we start there and then start building everything else in.
Michael?
Yeah, like Dana said, I also encounter people saying music and dance cannot change the world, and music is nothing and all of that. But here in Ghana, music is everything. I mean, funeral, there's music, even naming ceremony, even the activities that happens in life, it's all about music. So here we value music a lot, and we use music in a way of communicating. People use music to communicate. Also, when you are in sad mood, the music that the drummer is playing will tell you that this drummer is in a sad mood, or this drummer is in a happy mood. So with all this communication that are coming from music and dance, I think it's a great tool to give a message to the world that it can actually change the world. So what we that are interested in music and dance is that we should make sure our education about music and dance spread wider and change the world as a whole. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Other thoughts on this line of a discussion, Violeta? I wonder if you likewise have thoughts, and Easy.
Yes, I would like to share some thoughts about that. And I'm talking from the Panama situation, because I know in US it's totally different. But for example, I think something very important that could help a lot with this topic, it's like to incorporate dance and art in the education system, but not just to teach like how to do a nice movement, but also the teachers have to have this clear objective that where I want to take my students. So if we create this opportunity that we don't have in Panama, art, for in my point of view, for example, when I was studying here, art, we learned how to draw something because I'm very bad with that. But it was just to get your good grades, right? It wasn't something very deep that you can draw something freely what you're feeling. Neither. It was like you have to draw what the teacher tell you, and it have to be perfect because then you will have a bad grade. So what if we take dance as a way to teach different, I don't know, a topic at school? How can I teach social topics at school, but through dance or through art? So I think it would be something very nice if everybody at schools, at high school, have this opportunity to move their bodies. They are not going to be dancers, but they can use it as a tool. And I think the performing part, like not just being on stage, but the performing part have their advantage, and we can use it. Like people feel important when they are doing something on a stage, or maybe on a cipher or something like that. So maybe we can take those advantage and use it with the kids. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think Violeta, just to amplify your point, I think the what's really important and part about what you're saying is that it is a tool that any individual can use. So it's almost like a skill, obviously kind of some sort of a skill that you can develop that anybody can use to kind of express themselves. And it seems like I just, when I looked at the video that you guys showed, first of all, it gave me what's the goosebumps watching the video, but and really loved. I said this to Dana, loved the way that you guys do your video work. But it seems that in the process of dance, we seem to kind of warm up and open up. Right. And that warming and opening seems to be really important to people's capacity to engage in empathic conversation across lines of difference. And so that's, I guess, the stuff that's really interesting to me. And I want to note Maritza here, who's a cultural and citizen diplomat, made a point about that. It's already quite it's in existence in a lot of the dance diplomacy is oftentimes part of formal diplomatic events, and it would be great to hear from Julie and Debbie and others who've had actual experience in formal diplomacy. But the challenge I have to this is it's different to be watching dance diplomacy versus doing it, and to actually get the professional diplomats doing the dance diplomacy is wholly different. Because if it were taken seriously, right, the transformative effect that movement and doing something in concert with others that involves emotion and physicality can have for opening up the conversation, for warming and opening up people, then you have to take it so seriously enough that the actual negotiators, right, need to be involved in this, not just watching it as, oh, that's some pretty thing to look at, right? So I'm just wondering your thoughts on that, Debbie or Julie, and anybody else who'd like to offer your thoughts. And Isi, I'm sorry we missed you. If you first, and I think I'm mispronouncing your name again, Isi.
That's okay. It's just Izzy. It's just spelled a little differently. But I agree with everything that's been said. And I think that one thing that I've noticed working with Movement Exchange, and specifically on the international dance exchanges, and I think someone asked, maybe they missed, so we do international dance exchanges between the US and Panama. So we have US students or other dancers, people connected to movement, who will go to Panama and they'll participate in our programming there so that they can take classes with local dance professionals and then have an opportunity to teach to our partner organizations. So there's that element of exchange. But something that's really common on those experiences is the language barrier. So a lot of people who go to Panama don't speak Spanish, and most of our teachers and students there don't speak English. And so I think that at first, a lot of times people are a little bit concerned what that's going to be like, and how do I teach dance without knowing the language? And what's evident every single exchange is that dance itself is that universal language that that way that people can connect. And so I think speaking to how we can take dance to these larger diplomatic realms with the State Department, or, you know, people in suits and ties talking across the table about these big isms and issues, is a lot of times I think we are separated from movement just within our society, unless you are a dancer or you are an athlete or gymnast or whatever. And when you connect through movement, you find empathy within, you know, without like words necessarily. And so I think that that's just a really special component to this type of work in dance diplomacy, is getting out of your head and connecting. Okay, I'm a human, you're a human, we don't speak the same language, we don't have the same experiences, but we can still find connection. And I think from there, that's ultimately how you can create change. And then just because a lot of our programming is focused on youth, I think that it's really exciting to see that maybe if we can foster this type of self-expression and autonomy and capacity for empathy in the younger generations, that's only going to translate forward. So it'd be great to like get, you know, the older generations that are separate from dance doing the diplomacy work to actually go and dance. But I also think it's exciting to see that if we continue this work and continue to integrate it in different parts of society, then hopefully we'll create, you know, more lasting impacts just with people who are experiencing that from a younger age as well.
Julie, that's really awesome. Julie and Debbie, I'm wondering if you guys have any thoughts on kind of your experience with formal diplomacy and what role dance plays in when it appears in and whether, I guess, it's spectacle or participation, to kind of contrast the two. And while you're doing that, I'm going to move around because I have to connect my computer to power, but go ahead.
I'll go ahead and start. I mean, honestly, you would not want to see me dance, but I really appreciate the department. We do use dance and music and sports as tools to reach especially a young audience, but also people who don't speak English. Those are international things that we can do that don't require language. And you know, it's been very effective at building trust. You know, you have to build trust before you can move on to those harder issues. And when you build trust and that connection and you make friends, then you can start moving on to the more difficult negotiations, things like that. You know, your diplomats at a table at NATO or something, I can't quite see them doing this, but actually, interestingly enough, I've seen final sessions, you know, presidential summits and things, international conferences, and in which they start playing some, you know, music, salsa or merengue or something, and you actually do see some of these people starting to move around. And so I think it's got potential. I mean, especially when we do I can see when we do send dance companies that we make sure that they're also some of our diplomats who go along and are part of that, you know, workshop or whatever it is they're doing, and actually demonstrate that they're not afraid to get out there and dance. But I think it's going to take a while to get the formal diplomatic structure to incorporate dance into negotiations, that kind of thing. But Debbie, what do you think?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I was not a foreign service officer, but I was stateside at the U.S. Information Agency for many years. And then since then have been enchanted with being sort of a citizen diplomat and studying what happens. And, you know, a little bit of shameless self-promotion in the book that I mentioned in the chat, where there's a chapter that I did on dance diplomacy and other kinds of cultural diplomacy, public-private partnerships. I did an interview with, some of you may know about Company E. I did an interview with one of their dance directors and dancers and her colleague. Catherine Pilkington and Robert Priori, and they're well engaged for years with the Department of State Educational Cultural Affairs Bureau. And I just wanted, getting back to what Paul posted in the chat early on about relationship building and freedom of expression and how that might be a possible way to at least provide impetus for social kind of transformation, or certainly through trust building. Just a quick reminder that yeah, these kinds of dance events. I think that most diplomats are not so introverted that they wouldn't want to at least get out there on the dance floor and start moving around a little bit, especially if there's sort of a difficult tension in the air. So it becomes part of the structure, and it's the audience. You know, what do I have to lose? And they can entertain themselves and entertain others. That's more likely, you know, to show the way with that, and sort of break up the tension. And this one tour that Company E did in the mid-decade, last decade, in Israel, which did involve Palestinians, Gazans, as well as Israelis. You know, Robert Priori, one of the dancers, described learning about a particular kind of dance called, I think it was Gaga, like Lady Gaga. He said that it's a personalized process of self-discovery, and learning Gaga was very difficult even for Catherine Pilkington, my colleague, and I. And Rob Priori, in the interview that was done, recalled being completely immersed in the Israeli technique. It's truthfully changed my life, not just as a dancer, but also as a human, because it forces you to think in ways you never would think your body could move in. And that has not just translated through my own dancing, but also through my ideology as a person. So, I mean, this, you might say, was an implementer of cultural diplomacy and not a citizen diplomat, but just think, Violetta has talked about, you know, from a psychological perspective, think of how that ramifies through the family of the student who's being taught, and then the local community. Yeah, public and cultural diplomacy take a long time, but it lasts.
Yeah, you know what? There are all kinds of questions that I'm wondering. Like, and one research question seems to be interesting is, are people who engage in dance more empathic? In fact, and so, you know, that's eminently studyable. You just do a survey and figure out who's dancing, how much they're dancing, and then you ask a battery of empathy questions, and then you figure out if there's a relationship between dance and you can, you know, you can isolate that factor among the many factors that might be explaining people's empathy. So, you know, it gets back to, I think it's interesting what Julie was saying is, you said I don't think you'd want to see me dance, and you know, my partner loves to salsa dance, salsa and bachata, and I go with her reluctantly, but I do participate, and so, but nonetheless, it seems to me, you know, going in part on what Violetta and Izzy were saying, that if you institutionalize it into education, then perhaps, right, it would be less foreign to a lot of people out there who end up becoming professional diplomats, right? And that kind of expression might, in fact, they'd be open perhaps to kind of institutionalizing dance diplomacy and other forms of expressive, other forms of expression into formal negotiation process and formal kind of diplomatic processes. So, you know, I want to get back to Michael because, Michael, you mentioned earlier that it's kind of that music and dance is kind of woven into everyday life in Ghana in certain ways. And I'm wondering, in your experience, do politicians in Ghana and diplomats and other kind of dignitaries, do they actually participate in the dance in Ghana when there are kind of, it's part of formal process, or are they just simply observers watching a spectacle? Oh, you'll have to unmute.
Yeah, sorry about that. I mean, with all these dignitaries and during occasions and all of, most of them get involved with the music and dance. Like our dance assembly, anytime we are being invited or to come and perform occasions, you realize that at the end, that most of the dignitaries kind of jump in and also join the dance process. So it's not just because of the music or the dance, but also the message it gives out to the people. That is what calls them to join the music. So most of the dignitaries are always interested to join when there's a music or a dance going on, unless those people don't know how to dance, but still how to dance or sing, but still they'll try, join, and do whatever they can to join. Also, when you go to the northern part of Ghana, that particular area is most everything about music. So when there is a new chief to be installed, when there's a funeral, all these particular occasions, the people around, they need to dance. And even in some communities, when dancers and musicians are going to approach some of the dignitaries, they kind of ask permissions from the dignitaries, and then the dignitary will come and then join them, give them the permission to dance. So I would say most of the dignitaries participate in the Ghanaian traditional music and dance. Yeah.
Begum, do you have thoughts on this? You know, from your perspective, you're in Sarajevo now, but from Turkey, on the role of dance in diplomacy and kind of formal governmental affairs. Begum. Oh, Begum may not be paying attention right now, but Tasha, I'm curious as to, and Tasha and Maritza, if you guys have any thoughts on this as well. Tasha?
Yeah, so a lot of times when people ask me, how can I develop more empathy or build connections with people, I always encourage them to take on a project, a challenging project. Learning choreography together can be one of those challenging projects. My own experience engaging with Korean culture while learning salsa dance when I lived in Korea really created some strong friendships while I was there and put me in a position where I could get to know people a lot more on a personal level. When you go back to in the presentation, she's saying how dance develops all of these different characteristics, this vulnerability and this bond between people. It really is true. I've experienced it myself, not in an official diplomacy position, but just in the one-on-one and engaging with people from other cultures. And being able to see the world from someone else's perspective, learning the cultural dances that they embrace can really go a long way.
Right. Maritza, and then just open up. Dana, it looks like you want to also participate here. Maritza, any thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for this great program. I always love that we always bring a diversity of diplomatic, oops, sorry, I'm actually in a lobby, guys, I forgot. We always do a great job of bringing a diverse diplomatic sessions, which is so helpful because a lot of times folks tend to kind of think diplomacy only, you know, it's underneath the State Department and it's just only goes towards ambassadors, diplomats, FSOs. And so thank you, Paul, for always just bringing a diversity of topics. I love this one especially because I think it's one of the most important aspects of diplomacy. I think Julie gave a couple examples, or Debbie gave examples where they saw this incorporated with a lot of diplomatic events. So for example, myself, you know, when we went to China 3 or 4 years ago for our first people-to-people diplomacy, China made sure to include dance, art, in every single aspect, and even brought some of our American diplomats on stage to dance with them. So I'm actually going to look for that clip and send it over to you, so you can kind of incorporate it with the minutes of this meeting. I think they would be okay since it was widely circulated across China. But just so you can see that how that shifts the energy in the room. You know, when we were first getting prepped to go to China, we got, of course, a lot of those really intense meetings about making sure you do this, don't say that. But being able to participate in the culture and engage, it really changed the atmosphere, and we were able to really engage and exchange insights on business, and seeing our diplomats dance with the Chinese on stage and get involved really shifted our experience. And I've also seen it across, like, you know, we did an event in Colorado where local government was intentional about bringing a diversity of different dances as well too, which made a lot of the foreign nationals comfortable because they were a little bit, you know, nervous about, oh my goodness, I don't want to try my English, or am I saying the right thing, doing the right thing? But seeing an expression of their culture on stage make them feel, oh, okay, I'm at home, I can be myself, I don't need to be as tense. So I think what we could do with dance diplomacy, music diplomacy, arts diplomacy, which tends to fall underneath culture diplomacy, is do a better job of marketing these case studies, because they're across the board. I've seen them in every single diplomatic event that I've been a part of. And I always ensure to incorporate that into my events as well too. For example, right now we're doing an FSO series. We're trying to get more women of color to join the Foreign Service. And we've attached that with the culture diplomacy program. So what we've done is partner with the embassies and had them do presentations on their culture, but also have a language aspect to it. So folks who maybe were, I'm a little bit nervous about trying Arabic, or I would love to go to this country, but Arabic, I don't think I could ever learn that. But giving them that little bit of exposure to it kind of broke the ice, and in turn gave them the additional incentive to join the Foreign Service. So this is my favorite area of diplomacy. I think it's so important, and it's changed the world. I'm actually looking at ways to be more intentional about us doing it from the American perspective, especially with so much division going on with our country right now. You know, how can we, you know, take some of these great examples that we've done across the globe to solve great global solutions to help us reunite Americans at home. So yeah, thanks so much for allowing me to share, Paul. I have so many case studies, but I'll stop there.
Very cool. Dana?
Yeah, I was just, well, thank you. It's so exciting. I love this. It's bringing in like so many different things that I all love. But I mean, I think to your point, like this is happening everywhere. And like, that's, I think the frustrating, but inspiring thing about all of this work that we do is that we all know other people, artists, organizations that are doing this, but it's just, there's not that attention there. So that's just frustrating, number one. And then I think, secondly, I think it's really important to think about, you know, we kind of have moved into like the more like formal diplomatic space, and it's kind of implications for, but I think for movement exchange, and I know from the DMC's perspective as well, it's like, what if you really like, every person has a passion, every person has a love of something that they do. Like, I think that's a big thing for movement exchange, right? Like we're primarily working with dancers. The DMC is predominantly working with percussionists and dancers and artists, right? Like people who've identified their passion, right? What they love to do. And what happens when we encourage everybody to think like, I have a body, I have skills, I have something that I love, and centering that. And that's, I think, something that's really like, it makes a lot of sense when thinking about music and dance, because it's like, you are the expressive vehicle, right? Like your own body is, particularly with dance, right? Like it is you, which in my opinion, and what research seems to suggest, is one of the things that makes dance really unique. But, you know, like, why aren't we teaching our young students in the classroom, but what do you like to do? You like to cook, you like to, and I know that's what I like Paul's work does, you know, with this kind of idea of citizen diplomacy, but I still think we need to do a better job of centering it, of like, think about what you like, what your body has skills for, what you want to say, and encourage people to do that. Like, I mean, I didn't think that I loved, you know, world affairs and all that sort of stuff when I was little. Then I was a dancer and I thought they were like this, but like they actually like this. So I just think that's a huge lesson and kind of takeaway from this is like, we all have bodies, we all have passions, we all have skills. How do we use them? So.
Awesome. Let's finish up with some reflections. So we got Dana giving us some sort of reflection on this discussion. I want to give Violeta and Michael the chance also to kind of give your final thoughts on this. Violeta, if you're with us, do you want to offer your thoughts based on the discussion?
Yes, I just want to say that I'm very happy to share time with you. It was amazing to see that there are so many people around the world using art, in this case, art and music, to like create change in our society. So we recharge our batteries and we continue working on that.
Great. Michael?
I am so happy and honored to be a part of this amazing meeting. I actually love everything that the topics, everything that we talked about. What I have to say about music and dance is that you don't need to be an adult or a kid to be in music or to be a part of the music world. It's kind of a diverse project for everybody to be a part of. So the DMC is always open to anybody who wants to have the experience of music and dance. And not only that, but also the Ghanaian culture and what we do in Ghana. So we are open for everybody to show up and then learn more of our way of life. And this is how we preserve our traditional culture and then music and dance as well. Yeah, so thank you.
Great. I want to thank you guys for coming to us from your different vantage points, and not always with great internet connections. And but it's really appreciated that you took the time to give us your thoughts on this and share your experience. We're going to switch to briefly.
Paul, could I just do
yes.
something a little corny and sort of related to Panama, just to like sort of honor Panamanian culture? Just once, I think I've been moving around a little bit, but over here you can see some there. I believe they're called batillas in Panamanian dialect. I'm not sure if Violeta might know. And the one in the middle on the top is, my mother did these when actually she was pregnant with me. We were in Panama, she was in Panama, my father was in Panama. And I think the golden frog in the middle is sort of a legend, but maybe there are actually still some golden frogs in Panama. Anyway, having spent the first 6 weeks of my life outside of utero in Panama, I just wanted to say, you know, even more so, there's a special place in my heart for that part of the world, and I hope to get there. And you know, this is about citizen diplomacy anyway, right? So thanks for indulging me.
Very good. This is time for announcements. I think some of you have already kind of announced some things, and we will share, as I mentioned, things to the Zoom chat. I'm going to share one thing here, which is if you're interested in participating in a live international conversation we're going to be having around democracy and diplomacy. This is a fundraiser for Learning Life, but it's also actually going to be a conversation about how do we promote and make things like family diplomacy and also the more participatory and inclusive democracy happen in the world. And so just want to encourage people to attend that event. It's going to be an international event, so we will be having people from across the world joining us in that conversation, and then we'll be giving awards to those people who've been kind of stellar participants. I'm also going to share, if you're at all interested, because dance diplomacy is in some sense kind of you might say an ally of family diplomacy, which is the kind of work that I engage in. I'll share our family diplomacy page on Facebook and encourage you to join there. If you have actually examples of ways in which dance diplomacy is used with families, we can post that. And we have close to 8,000 people in our Facebook group across the world. So it's a great way to share with a wider audience. So those are two things. Anybody else have announcements that you want to share or reiterate?
I just put it in the chat, but MoveX is going back to Panama for our first international dance exchange post beginnings of COVID. So we're super excited. I mean, it's going to look a little different, but still, I mean, we've been able to keep going this whole time, thanks to Violetta's incredible work and Zoom and all of that. And so we're super excited to be back in person. So just if you know dancers, or, you know, it can be anybody. It's not like any formal dance trainings required, needed, but that is happening. So, and it's all the information's up on the website, but we're just super excited.
Great. Michael?
Yeah, also, we are about to kickstart our study abroad program in Ghana. And if you are interested in Ghanaian traditional music and dance, and you want to explore Ghana, learn more about Ghanaian culture, you are always welcome at the Dagara Music Center. There's contact on Facebook, Dagara Music Center, and then you find all the details, and you connect, and you come and experience more Ghanaian music and dance.
Yeah, I think that we got essentially what you said, but Dana, did you share a link to in the Zoom chat, because this will go to a wider audience? If you can share some sort of a link in the Zoom chat for Dagara Music Center for those, and then you know, some sort of explanation, of what they do, that would be great. Oh, you're muted.
I'll be up on the website. The website hasn't been updated in a little bit because of COVID, but you know, that'll be where everything goes. So
gotcha. Great. Anybody else? Maritza, Julie? All right. Tasha, do you have any, you mentioned your work at the start, but anything else that you want to mention?
Yeah, so next Tuesday, I will be holding a webinar on interpersonal leadership. Next Tuesday through the Central Fairfax Chamber. There's a link to the registration and details in the chat for anyone interested.
Awesome, great. And again, I will share this either today or tomorrow to the wider group. Our wider group, as I mentioned, includes not just this list of over 700 people across the world who are on our email list, but also we have a LinkedIn group and a Facebook group, which I encourage you guys to join. And it's actually a really good place if you're not already part of those. Debbie, can you post those two links to the Zoom chat? If I don't know if you have them readily available, but if not, I can probably pull them up. But there are two groups, one on Facebook. Actually, let me do that right now because I have the links right in front of me. So that's Facebook, and the LinkedIn group is this one. And those are worth joining to amplify what you're doing, especially with Movement Exchange and with the Dagara Music Center. Since you guys are engaged in forms of diplomacy, it's precisely the kind of things that we want to help promote. So please use those two resources to kind of get the message out. All right, everybody.
Paul, are we meeting in December?
Oh, yes, Maritza, good question. The next meeting is, let me give you the precise date. It is December 8th, Wednesday, December 8th at 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Eastern. So that's New York time. And yeah, and so you'll get notice of that if you're on the email list ahead of time. Thanks for reminding me of that, Maritza. And we'll be formulating new dates for the new year, but meeting 6 times like we did this past year, 6 times in 2022. All right, everybody. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your participation, and let's think deeply and act globally about dance diplomacy and other things. Dana, I'm totally with you. We got to have more conversation. All right, guys. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.